4th of 2009, even after she had told the police she did. It's back to standing. That lie allows her to get paid. Simple. Simple. The defense had talked about the injuries that the same nurse had seen on the defendant, was corroborating what had happened that day. What he didn't talk about, he talks about the photographs being hours long. I don't believe it was 12 hours. I think the interview with Detective Tamori started about 12 hours after the attack. The photographs were taken at the hospital sometime earlier than that. I don't remember the exact time, but I'm sure you folks have the notes though. But what he doesn't mention is the paramedics who arrive on scene within minutes, they don't see any of that either. They check her. She's already made this story. So they check. There's nothing. And the photographs that are taken by, I want to say it's Detective Tamori, one's in the hospital. You can see the bruises on her thighs. She sees the redness in her cheeks from where Stan slapped her. But nothing on her neck. The injuries for a slap stick, they stay, and they're there. But the pressure that she's describing throughout all of her interviews about being choked out, Dale putting such weight on her throat that she actually blacks out, doesn't leave a mark anywhere. Either you bruise easily or you don't. She's claiming to have these bruises on her thighs from hip bones, but comes out completely unscathed as far as bruising goes from a slap and strangulation. And the defense asked, well, why would she lie about bruises being hip bones? They look like finger marks. I could just said, I pried my legs apart. After all, wasn't this a rape? That was a problem at that point in time for her, wasn't it? Because at that point in time, her story was, when I woke up, Dale was already on top of me. You wouldn't have to use force to pry her legs open. She was sleeping. It was already occurring. She couldn't say, well, it was his fingers prying it apart, because that would be inconsistent with what she had been saying before. She didn't come out with her story about the rape happening while she was awake until the second part of the interview with Detective Tamori, after the same nurse had already seen it. She was keeping her story consistent. The problem is those bruises just don't look like they would be caused by hip bone. It's up to y'all to decide, but I'm not sure that would even be in the right position, let alone physically possible. You guys can take a look at those photographs and decide for yourself. But at that point in time, when she's giving the same nurse this description, she's still trying to get paid. And her story is still standing. Looking at another person's injuries, see a lot of the other injuries, the obvious ones from the hammer. There's also a little scrape on his shin that we got pictures of. But there aren't no scratch marks. There are no bite marks. They just aren't there. Nobody saw them. Nobody. Not the detective who took the photographs right after his surgery. Not Detective Bishop. Not Dr. Chen, who did the autopsy. A little scrape on his leg was still there at the autopsy. Nothing else. It's just a story. The defense wants you to believe, based upon their closing argument, that the defendant was being controlled by two different people, Dale and Alan Flores. If that's the case, they were doing a pretty pitiful job, weren't they? Let's start with Dale. What do we know about Dale as a controlling person? I want to start with something trivial. The missing bedpost from the four-poster bed. Now, according to her statement to the police, that was her side of the bed. He was supposed to be this person who wants a perfect house. So if that's her side of the bed, we had the detective talk about it, and the bedpost is removed, isn't that an accommodation making their room a little bit uglier? So she could see the TV. If that was really Dale's side of the bed, and he removed the bedpost for himself, it seemed to be a selfish move as a controlling man. The problem with that is, then her story about what happened that she gave to the police isn't quite right, because Dale was asleep on his own side of the bed, not encroaching over where she was. The problem with a lie is trying to keep it all consistent. When stories start overlapping and they start getting moved around and you start comparing them to other stuff, it's tough. When you go through the documentation that you have, and you didn't get to see a lot of it when it was being introduced, but I encourage you to do so. The billing documents, the water, electricity, it's all in her name alone, not Dale. All of the bank account information is just in her name. It's not in Dale. There's even a car registered just to her. The exhibits that show this are exhibits numbers 325, 393, 394, 401. Exactly what is he in control of? Her? Not the money, but her herself? She's having multiple affairs throughout their marriage. We know of at least two. That's with Travis Tatro and Alan Flores. What kind of control is that? He can't keep good enough tabs on her for months at a time. That's how long she was dating Tatro. Years at a time. How long she was dating Alan Flores. Not good. Let's talk about Alan Flores' quote control. The defense talks about him being a slave and master relationship. He's a controlling guy. Well, that poses a problem because if it is, as the defense suggested in their closing argument, that she's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or child sexual abuse, or post-traumatic stress disorder from child sexual abuse, just completely freak out when that happened. She would be so overhyped to the situation, she couldn't contain herself. She would avoid that situation. But she didn't. You can't have it both ways. I may be getting the testimony wrong, but I'm fairly confident that it was Alan Flores who was out $300,000. The defense wants you to believe that this ledger was to keep her under control. Her spending $300,000 in a year and a half doesn't sound like control. And if it is, I kind of want a piece. It sounds like manipulation. And not on Alan Flores' part. What we're looking at, if you want to talk about somebody who's controlling the situation, it is the defendant. We talked about the finances. Her name's on everything. We talked about the money she's getting from Alan Flores. Through the use of her aggregation trust that doesn't exist. $1 million that aren't coming in. She gets a lot of money. But if you're looking for somebody who's in control, and evidence is somebody who's actually in control here, think about Stan Cook. She has got control over him too. She actually got a man to confess to an act he did not do. He's got some mental issues. He had an accident. There's some problems. She was the one providing him a place to stay. That was her friend. According to the text messages in exhibit number 428, she slept with the gay man. If you remember in her interview, she referred to Stan Cook as being gay. According to Stan's testimony, she led him to believe that they would even get married someday. That's a person in control. The defense had talked about Alan Flores. Please pay close attention to it. And they went through a number of things about Alan Flores, insinuating he's more involved in the murder than he's letting on, and he's got a lot to hide. The first search warrant on his house happened on February 21st of 2009. So about a month, 5 weeks after the attack. 12 days after Dale died. All the evidence is still sitting there. Another search warrant was conducted on his house a week later, February 28th, and all the evidence is still sitting there. If his job is hiding stuff, he's off. talks about the immunity agreement, that he's getting a free pass for all of these crimes. Make sure I'm grabbing the right one. Exhibit number 431, it's a certified copy of the immunity order. Nobody's getting a free pass. The same thing as for Stan Cook. That order is in exhibit number 442. What those agreements provide for, simply, you'll get a chance to read them, they're going backwards, is that the testimony that they give, the words that come out of their mouth while sitting in this chair, to you folks, cannot be used as a basis for any charge against them. It does not mean that they cannot be charged with any crime. Any evidence gathered aside from their testimony could certainly support any criminal charge warrant. This agreement is given quite simply so that that witness can come up here and tell you what information they have. Period. It's not in exchange for not being charged with anything. Just saying what you say cannot be used against you in a court of law. That's it. There is a caveat to that, however. This is right in the agreement. I'll read it verbatim. The witness may, nevertheless, be prosecuted or subjected to penalty or forfeiture for any perjury, false swearing, or contempt committed in answering, failing to answer, or in producing, or failing to produce evidence in accordance with this order. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the only way Alan Flores or Stan Cook can get in trouble for coming in here and testifying is if they give you false information. The defense looks at that immunity agreement as a reason for him to lie. It can just as easily be looked at as his incentive to tell the truth. Were Stan Cook and Alan Flores involved in this murder in some way? You have the evidence. I mean, you can take a look at it. But you have an instruction that says absence of any other participant. Whether or not they're standing trial in here, in other words, isn't what you're here to decide. It's whether the evidence against this defendant is sufficient to substantiate the charge. This evidence could be looked at it a couple of different ways with the stuff at Alan Flores' house. Was he okay with the plan? When he first heard about the plots of the murder, did he care? Was he happy about it? It's really irrelevant. To the extent at this point in time that they were involved in a murder, I guess we'll look at logical results for that. Let's say, back in December, when this plot to kill Dale was first revealed to him, he said, yeah, let's do it. He helped the defendant plan it, maybe provided her a gun in case that's what she wanted to do, and she did it. Guess that would mean that he was part of the premeditated murder that the defendant actually committed, right? If he's involved that early on in the planning and processing of this murder, and she's the one who actually did it, that would mean that she was involved in the planning and premeditation herself. Here it comes. Same with Stan Cook. Whether they were part of the planning or not, evaluation by Dr. DeMarco, and Dr. Karp for that matter. Dr. Karp's, quote, diagnosis of PTSD was a qualified one. It was by history, her self-report. But what were the problems with that? The problems were that the information that was being provided to Dr. DeMarco through the testing and clinical interviews was not matching up. She was manipulating the tests. The test results weren't corresponding with the other documentation. It's not consistent. Her diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder, that one was unequivocal. Check. Overruled. When you're looking at forensic evaluations in a setting such as this, you need to be mindful of the secondary gain. With a regular patient, as Dr. DeMarco tells me, they're in there to get help. There may be issues for secondary gain. I think she used not being able to go to work, those kind of things for some of those folks. But by and large, you come in off the street to see a psychologist, you're looking to get better. In a forensic evaluation setting, that may not be the case. You may be looking for a defense. You have an incentive to fudge. I won't go through all the testing, but what the testing results were showing was that her results were not consistent. Sometimes not consistent within the test, like the MCMI that Dr. Karp administered, where it's showing a person who's hallucinating and has avoidance tendencies, but also has severe dependence tendencies, which don't coexist. Who's manic to a high extreme, even amongst people who have mania. But in the other test, for regular, it's based on the regular population, her mania scores are really low. Dr. DeMarco recognized the problem. That's your conditional diagnosis. Now let's start talking about the evidence from that night. The defense talks about the, quote, magic shorts, unquote. Well, I'll let you guys review your notes. But when Mr. McGivens was testifying about those shorts and the blood patterns on those shorts, what he said was he could neither put those shorts on nor take them off of bail based solely on the blood pattern evidence. What he could say is the position where they were found, tucked under the dresser, was not where they were when the blood was being shed. He also said that those patterns on the inside of the waistband are consistent with somebody having taken those shirts off with bloody hands. And the patterns on the leg are consistent with them having been worn by somebody laying on their left side during the bloodshedding event. It is the defendant herself during her interview that puts those shorts on bail. I kind of made a joke about it in my first opening. The defense kind somebody's shorts is a life-saving technique for a head injury. And we know from the first responders' photos, the blurry, not so good image photos, that Dale's already without clothes when the police are rendering treatment. And they testified he was naked when they got there. They didn't take him off, neither before nor after they started rendering aid. The defense had talked about the blood pattern. Blood's everywhere. And the first blow doesn't produce blood. It's impossible to produce blood. So nobody can say where Dale was when that first blow was struck. Because that would be true to somebody. But also remember they had repositioned the sheets on the bed to account for the void pattern on the fitted sheet. You folks remember going through those photographs? The sheets were pulled up. And there is no void pattern on the top of those sheets in the shape of Dale. In other words, Dale was at least partially covered by the sheets at the time his head is getting smashed. So what is the defense asking here? That at some point, double-handed overhead blow hits Dale while he's standing on the right side of his head, and then he tucks himself into bed, where the rest of the beating occurs. No. That doesn't fit. It doesn't fit at all. Dale was in bed, on his left side, away from the attacker. That's where it happened. The damage to his skull is about the size of my fist. All of those blows are being delivered in a size this big. A moving target with a hammer, are you going to be able to do that? With a nail head, sometimes people miss and it ain't moving, and they hit their own finger. It's not logical to assume that she's going to be delivering precise blows to a very specific area on anything that's moving. It's just not logical. The defense also talked about the 911 calls, and that the defendant called 911 right away. And they discussed Rhiannon in this 237 time. What she really heard were the first responders. But they hadn't been called yet. Detective Harton came in and told you just the other day. And she checked the clock in Rhiannon's room with the dispatch time that very day when they were synced. It was the same time. It's not the first responder. Based upon the people in the house, the only male left would be Stan. Stan coming in after having walked in on the brutal attack, taking the hammer from the defendant and putting it on the table, sitting with Dale. Dale. Stay with me, man. Stay with me. There is no hysterics during this time. Rhiannon testified and told you that after she had heard that into her room, and a little while later, a man comes in, who she assumed was the police, told her to stay in her room. Based upon the evidence that you heard, ladies and gentlemen, that man was officers Churchman and or Dornbush. Remember, they had told you when they went into the house, they went in to clear it with Sergeant Mondrell to make sure there weren't any other threats to police officers or emergency personnel. They checked the doors on the way to the master bedroom, including the girl's door. And that happened after. She heard the voices, but before the officers reached that bedroom. The defense talks about premeditation. What does it mean? We talked to you about it in the context of post-traumatic stress disorder, reflexive action. They read to you the jury instructions. Premeditation can mean days, weeks, or months, like the plan to kill Dale. Premeditation can be shorter. The time to go get a hammer. The time to walk over to Dale. The time can be even shorter. The time between each blow. The time between the first blow and the last. Looking at those crime scene photos, ladies and gentlemen, with the amount of blood sprayed everywhere in that house, there is no question she went into that attack with the intent to kill Dale. It's unmistakable. And the evidence before you is that she had been planning this for at least a month. And then she did it. She had several opportunities not to. But she didn't exercise any of those opportunities. Go live with Alan Flores. Just walk away. The sexual assault actually happened and Dale's already asleep. Just leave the house. Call the police. Lock yourself in the bedroom with the gun that you just got. Dale was laying in his bed. He was no threat. Even if you choose to believe her version of the events, walk away. When you read the self-defense instructions, you can only use self-defense if the danger is imminent and reasonably necessary. In this case, under her best case scenario, that doesn't even exist. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm asking you to find the defendant guilty of first-degree premeditated murder as charged. Thank you very much for your time and consideration in this matter, ladies and gentlemen.
Going back to page 17 of the instructions. When you go to the jury room, you will choose a fourth person to be in charge of your deliberations. He or she will sign any verdict. He or she will preside over the deliberations. decide the case without sympathy, bias, or prejudice. The parties expect you will carefully and impartially consider all of the evidence, follow the law stated in these instructions, and reach a just verdict regardless of the consequences. All 12 of you must agree on any verdict reached. All 12 of you must agree whether the verdict is guilty or not guilty. Omitting the official caption, it says, "We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action upon our oaths, do find the defendant as to count 1, first-degree murder." There's a line for not guilty, guilty, and one for unable to agree. Juror number 1, where are you? I received your note, and we will designate you as one of the alternates. And I'd like you to remain afterwards for a moment in my office. I just want to double check something with you before I decide how to treat you, but you'll be one of the alternates. So there'll be 2 alternates picked. So Marlene and Donna, do you want to?
Juror number 11, juror number 4.
Juror number 4. It's juror number 4. Who's juror number 11? Okay. You're going to be designated alternates, but your duties don't stop here, because if we move into phase 2 and or phase 3, you'll be brought back. And we've already lost 2 jurors to date. So, but you will not participate in the deliberations at this point in time. So, but your admonition continues, and if the jury returns a verdict of first-degree murder, you will be called back to continue your duties for the next phase and then the phase after that. So, when you come back though, if we come back for phase 2, the deliberating jurors and the alternates should not discuss what happened during deliberations. So the 12 deliberating jurors are not to discuss and tell the alternates what happened during the deliberations. So Donna, do you want to take the 2 alternates, take their jury notebooks, and then send Sydney in, and I'll give the other jurors the rest of the instructions. Juror number 1 should remain in our office for a moment. Okay, for the remaining jurors, as I told you yesterday, the schedule's up to you. The minimum though is 10:30 to 4:30, or 4:15 every day. With this following caveat: by the time I can round up the lawyers and get ready to start again, we're talking at least 45 minutes. So when I say 4:15, that means after 4:15, I can't get everybody back in the building, and which means the verdict will be then